Uh, well, welcome everybody. For those of you who I haven't met, my name's David McCready. I'm the Chief Executive of the Australian British Chamber of Commerce. And thank you for joining us for this webinar to hear from our two healthcare experts. Firstly, Professor Tony Young, OBE, National Clinical Director for Innovation, NHS England, and founder of the Clinical Entrepreneur Program, who's dialing in from the UK. Welcome and good morning, Tony. And Bronwyn Le Grice, good evening, Bronwyn, who is the founder and CEO of Ant Health and who's based in Melbourne, but apparently has snuck out to regional Victoria. So he's not in the harsh lockdown of Melbourne CBD and close environs. So congratulations to you. Kat Boyd, who's the Acting Consul General, who's going to speak shortly, is unfortunately in the Melbourne CBD, and I'm sure there are a few others on the call who are. So good luck, and I hope everything's going all right on the lockdown front. I'm sure there are probably others in the UK who are finding the similar challenges going forward, but let's not digress too far. I could go on a tangent very quickly. Could I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet? I'm in Sydney, so I'm on Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, but others around the country will be on various Indigenous lands, and we acknowledge their elders past, present and emerging. So thank you very much for joining us, whether it's evening here in Australia or morning in the UK or afternoon if you're in Western Australia, just to give us the full suite. It's fantastic to be partnering again with our great friends at the UK Department for International Trade and of course, the Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office nowadays. And it's great to have Kat Boyd, the Deputy Consul General in Victoria, for Victoria, South Australia and Tasmania, and currently acting. She's got a couple of days left before the new Consul General arrives. I'm sure she'll be happy to put that workload back on somebody else's desk. So thank you very much, Kat, for joining us. And she'll introduce the speakers for us in a moment. I'd also like to acknowledge a few people who have joined us on the call, in particular Frank Maguire MP, who's the Victorian Parliamentary Secretary for Medical Research. Had a great time in London with him probably about 14 months ago now, and exchanging stories and looking at the environment over there and over here. So it's terrific to have you on the call, Frank, and I look forward to being able to catch up with you in person, hopefully in the not too distant future. I believe we're also going to be potentially joined by Elizabeth Toff, the Secretary in New South Wales, but in these times, you never know, so hopefully she might be able to join us later. The Chamber is also supported by our principal sponsors, and I especially welcome representatives from HSBC, Lendlease, Mott MacDonald and Unipart, who have joined us on the call tonight. Thank you for your support, particularly through these challenging times. Our principal sponsors have really made a huge difference to our organisation, and it would be very remiss of me not to thank them on this occasion. I'll introduce you to Kat Boyd in a second, but just to give you a lay of the land of what we're going to do over the next couple of hours. So we're going to invite Tony and Bronwyn to make some opening remarks and tell us a little bit about the work that they do. Following that, I'm going to ask them to introduce some of the wonderful entrepreneurs that we have on the line today, and they're going to tell us, give us a pitch for about 4 or 5 minutes each. There'll be an opportunity if anybody has any questions to ask questions both at that time, but also during the Q&A, which will follow that. We should have plenty of time. We've got a couple of hours, so plenty of time for us to get into lots of interesting conversations and help people understand what we're doing here in Australia, what's happening in the UK, and hopefully finding some opportunities and avenues for future success and partnerships. So it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Kat Boyd now. Kat arrived in January to take up her role as Deputy Consul General. She's obviously seen lots of Australia in the last 6 months, but I think she did get about a little bit before we got into this COVID crisis. But she's been a terrific support for the Chamber. Her focus as Deputy Consul General is partly around the prosperity regime and views of the UK government, and has been leveraging the UK's industrial strategy here in Australia across industry, civil society and government. So it's terrific to have her on board. Prior to her posting in Melbourne, Kat led a team working on citizens' rights policy in the Department for exiting the European Union, and was responsible for engaging UK nationals in the EU and EU citizens in the UK around their rights post Brexit, but she also has a bit of a health background. But I'll let her tell you about that. So Kat, I'll pass to you.
Thanks, David. And you're absolutely right. I started my civil service career in the Department for Health, which is a few years ago now. But I think then it's always given me a really keen interest in health policy, and innovation is a big part of that. And also I do have to say a huge admiration for those that work in the sector and everything that they do. Fully admire them. I'm really pleased to be here with you today and to listen to the discussion on innovation in healthcare. I would just like to thank David and the team at the British Chamber. They've done such a wonderful job over the past few months of keeping us entertained and engaged during various lockdowns. And being in Melbourne, as David said, it's definitely, it's been great for me. So thank you. And thank you for facilitating the discussion today. I'm really pleased that the Department for International Trade could sponsor today's webinar. Many of you will know, but for those that don't, we have quite an extensive UK Department of International Trade team here in Australia. And they work to support companies to explore markets. So that's both UK companies looking to come to Australia and Australian companies looking to expand to the UK. The team cover every single sector, but I do think it's fair to say that digital health is a growing one in both the UK and Australia. And I think part of that is probably due to the year that we've had and with COVID-19, which everyone on this call will be well aware, and the innovation that we've seen come out as we try and tackle this pandemic. But also, I think it's got a big role in the future in an economic recovery. And certainly here in Australia, the Australian National Science Organisation, which is an organisation called CSIRO, recently identified digital health as one of 6 key sectors, which will be key in Australia's recovery. And I know in the UK, our health sec there, our Secretary of State for Health, has always said that tech is vital to the sustainability of the NHS in the long term. So hopefully lots to share and lots to learn from each other and lots to link up on. But let me introduce our speakers who are much better versed at talking about the future of the digital health sector and where it's headed in both countries. So first up, we have Professor Tony Young. So welcome, Tony. Tony is the first National Clinical Director of Innovation at NHS England, where he's been since 2014. And in 2015, Tony founded the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme, which has become the world's largest entrepreneurial training programme for clinicians. Alongside this, he is a consultant urological surgeon in the NHS and a serial entrepreneur, somehow finding the time amongst all of that to found 4 medtech startups. Speaking directly after Tony, and for the Australian perspective, is Bronwyn Le Grice. Bronwyn is the founder and CEO of And Health, which is Australia's leading health tech scale-up accelerator. She's got over 18 years executive experience in the health tech sector, spanning venture capital, corporate development and industry advocacy. She holds a number of advisory roles, both here in Australia and internationally, which all seem to be centred on innovation and health. So I don't think we could have found 2 more people more experienced to talk to you about the digital health sector. Both Bronwyn and Tony have brought along 3 companies with them to showcase the kinds of innovation that are happening in health and the impact that these can have. I'm going to let Tony and Bronwyn introduce you to those when the time comes, but I'm really looking forward to hearing from everyone. I think the last thing for me to say is if there are any companies that are listening in to us today that do want to expand to either Australia or the UK, then absolutely get in touch with us at the Department of International Trade here in Australia. As I said, we're here to support, we're here to lend a hand, to help you to connect into the market. So hopefully we'll hear from you soon. And with that, I'll hand you over to Tony. Thanks all.
Great, sorry, forgive me. I was just looking at the great questions that Roger has already put in the box as you were saying that again. Gosh, I've got a task ahead of me. So David, thank you so much and thank you, Consul General, for your welcome. To an early morning in South Essex, just north of the River Thames, 100 yards at the end of my street there. And it's great. It feels great to be back with you, David, in Australia. At least I can have a bit of sunshine, even if it's only digital. So much to cover. Do you know, I could share my screen with you and show you what I think is an amazing PowerPoint display, but instead I've brought along with me today some human PowerPoints, 4 of our amazing clinical entrepreneurs that you are going to hear from a little bit later. But let me tell you a little bit about the role I'm in at NHS England and what we're doing here. And very briefly, David sent me 10 minutes. So that's a long elevator pitch. Let's see what we can get in. He set the starting gun earlier, so I'm already off. So I'm a frontline clinician, as you heard, still in the National Health Service. I'm still an operating surgeon at Southend Hospital in Essex. I'm the Associate Medical Director as well for one of the largest foundation trusts in the country. We look after 1.2 million people, have a budget of around £2 billion for the health and care of our population. I'm responsible for innovation and transformation of services there, leading digitization of a number of things, so the whole of our outpatient services at the moment, we're doing that. I'm also the chair and director of medical innovation at the medical school at Anglia Ruskin University, where I've helped them build up their science park capability, work across local government, healthcare, industry, investors, academia, bringing them all together. And then 6 years ago, Sir Bruce Gere, the National Medical Director, invited me to come to NHS England and become the National Clinical Director for Innovation. Which was a really interesting choice because, as you heard earlier, I'd done 4 startups myself, when I was in my 20s and 30s. And I fought the system my whole way, because guess what? We didn't support entrepreneurs in the National Health Service. If you wanted to be an academic, great. If you wanted to be a researcher, a teacher, a leader, fantastic, you got our support. But if you wanted to be an entrepreneur, we did the opposite of support you. So when Sir Bruce approached me and said, Tony, come to the centre, we want you to drag us in the direction you're going. And I said, are you kidding? Have you seen the scars on my back? They'll take me out in no time. And he said, I'm going to give you the air cover. Now get on with it. Air cover's great. Money, power, ability to make change would have been awesome too, but at least I had air cover. That was really good. So, and the task I was given was, how can we grow the life science economy in the UK? How can we get the latest, greatest things taken up across our system? I became the senior clinical advisor to the UK government on healthcare innovation. And really, we just wanted to make the NHS in England the go-to place for medical innovation. But no money, no power, go and see what you can do was the instruction. So I basically get involved with pitching lots of policy, ideating lots of things, and it's quite amazing. So I'm going to let you into some secrets. Don't tweet them, because you'll work out how it operates. Do you know, if you write enough policy documents and you keep floating them around and pushing them, eventually some demand comes from somewhere and they say, oh, we've got to get this submitted for the spending review or for this or that. And where is all the new policy? And I take out the dozen or so papers I've been championing for the last few years. It seems like, say, oh, what do you think of this idea? And everyone got through this round to the minister's desk for the spending review. We'll see what happens. But so, there is a way of actually just keeping going, being keen, enthusiastic, putting forward positive ideas and solutions that we might face. And I think I saw Roger's question earlier as I was looking at what's the most valuable piece of infrastructure in digital health to make it work. Easy. Absolutely. It's people. Okay. The most valuable asset we have in the night. You can have a box full of stuff. It doesn't work without the people. And if they're not trained and skilled and empowered and you haven't got the right culture in your system, people, the whole time. So long story short, 5 years ago now, I pitched the idea that we should change this culture we had where we weren't embracing our entrepreneurs and telling them how wonderful they were. In fact, we should learn from our colleagues in the United States who would, if you weren't involved with a business or entrepreneurial, they didn't want you in their centre because they said you're not good enough. And in England, it was the opposite view. Now we're turning the tide on that. So we launched the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme. It's now become the world's largest entrepreneurial training program in healthcare. In our first 4 years, we had 507 clinicians through the program, but this year we are live. You can see applications are open now on the NHS England website. We've opened it up to everyone, not just working in the National Health Service, but also delivering services for it. So that could be foreign companies and others coming in, delivering those services. And what we aim to do is give you commercial skills, knowledge and experience to try and help prepare you, take those things from the startup world and help us transform healthcare. Do you know what we realized quite early on was, and why clinicians and healthcare were particularly so good at this, was, do you know, in the startup world, what it is a startup is just an experimental methodology for seeing you've got a business idea, A, that works, and B, can scale. That's it. A clinical trial is an experimental methodology for seeing if you've got an idea that works and it can scale. So the startup is to the commercial world as the clinical trial is to the medical world. And I think that's one of the things we uncovered. Why clinicians, we just unearth this thing, let them flourish and grow. We give them some resources on our program. They get a commercial coach and mentor, opportunities for less than full-time training. If they're in training, whole load of educational and networking events. We connect them into customers and funding. With a whole load of industry days and sponsors that help us really upskill our entrepreneurs and give them that unfair advantage. So our figures, I hope, speak for themselves. In 4 years, we have created 226 life science startups. They have raised over £250 million between them. They've created over 1,300 jobs and impacted over 20 million patients that we can count. Now, I can't think of another a global corporate or another nation that has done that in a particular sector in the startup space. And we have done it by empowering our most valuable asset, which was the front line in the National Health Service. Wow. So you're going to hear from 4 of them in a minute, and I could go on and I tell you, picking which ones are going to come on and talk to you is a really difficult task. So we've tried to get some who are more at the intersection of digital health, although we could have covered things from diagnostics and therapeutics through to robotics, through to one of our guys. We managed to get in the ventilator crisis. We managed to get him in front of the Cabinet Office pitch. He developed this low-cost mini portable ventilator that was ITU standard. And he got embedded into the Red Bull racing team at Formula One for 3 weeks. And at the cost of around £10 million, we took something from concept prototype stage through to ready for mass manufacture. Now, fortunately, the data and the infection rate changed, so we didn't need to commission that. But wow, we did one of it. Have we designed a program that had, over 500 entrepreneurs, and one of them had a low-cost portable ventilator design ready to go? Amazing. So look, I'm going to shut up at that point and hand over to Bronwyn to tell us about what she's doing, but then we'll come back in a minute and I'll introduce you, instead of hearing more from me, to some of, and I haven't filtered what they're going to say. I'm giving them 5 minutes to tell you about their passion, their drive, why they're so thrilled to be here this morning, and tell you about what they're doing. And I'm hoping we'll come out in the conversation later with David and others, is actually our plans for looking how we can work in partnership with Australia in what we're doing around healthcare and life science entrepreneurship. So Bronwyn, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Tony. So firstly, I'd just like to thank the British Chamber of Commerce and also the UK Department of International Trade. I almost called you UKTI, sorry, 20 years of training. Also acknowledge Mr. Frank Maguire being here, Parliamentary Secretary for Medical Research in Victoria. I would like to also acknowledge the traditional owners of which we sit today. To David's point, I didn't move out of Melbourne recently. I did move out last year, but here in the Macedon Ranges, a very beautiful part of Australia where I live, that is the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, but I acknowledge the Indigenous owners of all the lands on which we meet today from our various offices and lounge rooms. So I'm a lot more specialised than Tony and also not as distinguished. So I am going to use pretty PowerPoint slides that my entrepreneurs will know that my amazing team have created, because that's what they do. They make me look amazing. And I guess one of the really big differences for us is that we are specifically digital health. We don't colour outside our lines. All we do is digital health, and specifically we heavily focus in digital medicine and digital therapeutics. At the moment, we are Australia's only organisation which has designed and delivered specialised technology identification, screening and commercialisation programs which are proven to scale up and accelerate commercialisation for digital health companies. We bring a specific type of model which is globally unique around bringing proven innovators into very deep advisory teams around the cohort companies we select for our virtual incubator, and we run educational programs from the very earliest stage to the very latest stage. Our founders come from anywhere, and you'll hear from a whole bunch of different guys today, but our founders are clinicians, but they're also patients, they're carers, they're people from the tech community who want to get into a healthcare segment. They are medical researchers, they are engineers, they come from anywhere, and where they come from, we're completely agnostic about. Our job is to help them define and commercialise their ideas. We have the only specialised team. We do nothing but this all day, every day. The teams that will present later can attest to the fact that we are rather single-minded in pursuit of digital health in Australia. Just in order to give a bit of context, so we do look at digital health as being the broader skill set with health IT and decision support software and electronic medical records, kind of forming a foundation piece. But we're really looking and working very hard with innovators in the digital medicine and digital therapeutic space, where entrepreneurs require both commercial evidence, but also clinical evidence and often real world evidence in order to really accelerate commercialisation. And one of the biggest challenges we find, and we have a slightly different system to the NHS in this, is that who is going to pay often remains the single largest challenge for our companies in terms of navigating complex payment pathways, noting that most Australian companies are born global in that they need to access global markets. I apologise for the background noise if people can hear it. I do have very small children and it is the witching hour. If the puppy starts, then I might give up. We have a novel industry-led cooperative commercialisation model. So we work with corporate partners and to facilitate their investment into digital health product development and commercialisation. They not only fund us in part, but they also bring all of their skill sets, networks and C-suite expertise to hands-on delivery of the programs. We work across the country now with state governments and partners, as well as with MTP Connect at a federal level. And we have a highly collaborative model. So we generally try to stick to what we're good at and collaborate on everything else. In terms of the program suite, you know, when the entrepreneurs that are going to present came through And Health, we were just doing the Incubate program, And Health Plus Virtual Incubator. This is the program suite that's been built out. Our Navigate Clinician and Medical Researcher program, in partnership with Curve Tomorrow, we're expecting to bring online in 2021, and we're really keen to talk with Tony about how we do that in partnership with the NHS program and provide some two-way expertise. And we've just launched our Elevate skill-specific needs-based coaching platform, whereby our Australian companies can now access our international coaching networks. So it is a suite of programs specifically designed for the digital health commercialisation pathway. It's not around medical devices or diagnostics or drugs. I spent my time in those industries, and I'm happy playing in my little segue of tech and health. But realistically, every single thing we design is about having a material impact on the commercialisation pathway for those companies. Can we get them there faster, better, cheaper, bigger market, whatever it is. In terms of the model for our virtual incubator, in Australia, I'm the only person that left my venture capital career probably towards its peak, and went off to set up a non-profit, non-equity taking accelerator. but we do bring a very VC style approach to the companies we work with. We work backwards, we do deep gap analysis, and then we look to fill the gaps that would provide the gaps where an investor or an enterprise level customer would flinch in due diligence. So can we close the gaps that would cause a due diligence flag? We don't actually hand over money because we don't take equity. What we do is we work collaboratively with the advisory panel we create and the company to mutually agree how we spend cash and in kind around them. Companies get around $350,000 of cash and in kind. We're non-profit and non-equity. Our incubate program is all about scaling. It's not startups. Startups don't get selected. That's why we built out all the other programs. And it's all about harnessing the power of a multi-sectoral collective. There are so many sectors that interface with digital health. We harness all of them. So in terms of what it looks like, we take 5 projects in each round. We are hopeful that next year this program will be funded so that we can double the size of it, but we will probably still only take 5 each round because the onboarding process is extremely intensive. And we incubate them over a 6 to 9 month period with a multi-sectoral C-suite advisory panel. We pre-vet and pre-source all suppliers. We run tenders on all third-party pieces of work. And we use all of our international networks, which are very specific to digital health, to bring these companies the best possible advice and support. In terms of what we did in our 2 pilot cohorts, some of the companies that'll be here, we leveraged what was less than £1 million of government and industry investment over 2 years to create the entire entity that is End Health with its team. We worked with 10 companies. We delivered 3.757 million to them in cash and in kind. And you can just see the variety of the types of stuff that we do. It's everything from a scale-up manufacturing strategy to a health economic strategy to a clinical trial with a large pharma. We also do a huge amount of industry development, both nationally and internationally. And we work really broadly across the companies. And I think the companies don't have time to talk about it, but we're talking 1 to 2 hours a fortnight of being grilled by 7 C-suite execs from 7 different sectors. It's certainly not for the faint-hearted, the End Health Plus program. So I'm not sure if they're success stories or survivors, but they can tell you about that later. What we don't do, so some of the things that actually make us a little bit different is all the stuff we don't do 6-minute pitch events, which is hilarious because we're now on a 6-minute pitch event. Wicked, David, you've just made a liar out of me. More that we don't do that as an investment raising system. So as a VC, I never took an investment decision off a 5-minute pitch. What we do is institutional deal flow days where we get 8, 10, and I got demand from about 15 institutional investors to sit down and do 45-minute meetings with our companies as an initial deal flow meeting within their existing investment process. We're not into shiny pitch decks. Although this is shiny, it is very simple. We don't spend much on graphic design. We don't get our companies to spend much on graphic design. They will all tell you that I keep telling them that the best investments I ever made as a VC were the ugliest pitch decks, so I don't care what they look like, I just care what's in them. We don't promote valuation over value. We really encourage people to go for realistic valuations and build strong, sustainable international businesses with the assumption that valuation will come. We also, because we don't take equity, are able to advise the boards and management of companies if they're not investable. So I don't have to write down my balance sheet in order to say to a board, this is a great product, but standalone, it's not going to make you an investable company. Here's 5 global companies that you can partner that with. But I don't have any conflict. It also means that investors trust our recommendations because we don't have any reason to spruik our own companies if we don't believe in them. We're pretty blunt. We don't sugarcoat. We don't take equity. We very much strongly advocate a regulated path through our software as a medical device and connected device companies, and we try to avoid jargon and hype. Quickly on the outcomes, and they're much smaller than Tony's, but hopefully I think I used a lot. It's a smaller amount of money than the NHS has, I know that much, but with $1 million on a small pilot, we have our companies, 9 of which are continuing and reporting, 1 of which we advise to pursue a different path. We've had an exit to a NASDAQ listed company by DoseMe, 40 million Australian exit. Companies have raised over 30 million. This data is at June, so I should have new data soon. They've generated almost 15 million in new revenue, 188 new jobs. and impacted 91,000 patients. 17 new international market launches. In terms of what really kind of excited me this year, because let's face it, there's not much that's been exciting about this year. This was really exciting this year. So when we looked at the numbers that the companies posted in December, and then we looked at what they posted at the end of June, throughout pretty tumultuous 6-month period, these companies grew substantially on nearly every single metric except for international market launches, which, given as Australians we are literally legally forbidden from leaving the country, I think is probably understandable. But you know, the growth in, they've raised capital, they've grown their revenues by over 50% and their patients served by over 70%. And to me, this talks about why digital health has to be at the front of our COVID recovery efforts in Australia. We did do a report, people can look it up, but we validated that there is a pipeline of companies. We've now worked with 381 companies directly. We've had impact, and I encourage everyone to look at the report. We've got some great data on what the industry looks like at a very granular level. The 3 companies that are presenting today are CancerAid, Seer Medical and Perks Health, and I can't wait to introduce those guys to you. Hopefully I haven't gone over time, David. Am I good?
All good, all good.
And I can hand back to Professor Tony Young.
Please, Tony, onto your entrepreneurs.
Brilliant, and thank you so much, David. And Bronwyn, do you know, I really loved your presentation. I've got a bit of slide envy. You couldn't let me have a copy of those, could you? Because there was so much great. Do you know, I feel like we're siblings in a way, but on different parts of the world.
Don't ever let me near a scalpel, Tony. It will end really badly.
I work with a laser mostly, actually. You'd be all right.
You of course can have the slides. In fact, I'll make them available to everyone afterwards.
That's one. I mean, what impressive achievements! And I think I'm surprised actually to share that we share quite limited resources in what we've been given. But actually, we share passion and vision and drive about making that happen, and that came across. So I loved some of your. I'm sorry, I'm picking up on this. I'll cut down what my entrepreneurs have time for. I love your. Do you know, I'm going to take that phrase. I'll quote you on it. Born global. I've not heard that before, and you know, we need that in Britain. Absolutely, I want our entrepreneurs.
If you hang out in Australia and New Zealand, you'll never hear anything else.
Ah, there we are.
It's the ongoing phrase.
No, I love that. And the other thing, so our entrepreneurs will tell you, I regularly, I'll be more polite than grill them. I regularly give them constructive feedback. But I'm a big fan of Elon Musk, and one of his top tips for how a startup, you really build success in the startup is, he says, you go to your friends and you seek criticism regularly, because your friends really care about you and they normally know what's wrong with your business, but they don't want to tell you because they're your friend. And so I hope I'm a friend to all our young entrepreneurs, and when they come and see me, they know they get tough love, honest, open, straight talking, to try and get their idea and move forward. There's such an overlap in what we do. However, I'm going to take a slight counterpoint to you on, well, in a way, in 5-minute pitches. So first of all, 5-minute pitches are too long. You get 30 to 60 seconds. And the reason for that is, at NHS England's headquarters in Skipton House, if you're standing at the lift and Simon Stevens, my chief exec, gets in, he will look at me. And if I'm with someone, he will look at them and say, "What are you up to, Tony?" And I know I've got 30 seconds to land some support from my CEO before I get to the top. So all our guys get talk to pitch. But however, I do agree with you on it's not a great way to make investment decisions. But actually, when I get 30 seconds with Simon, that's enough to land a few deals normally. So look, I'm gonna shut up at that point. So I'm going to go on the random selector that is the Zoom screen that's in front of me for how we introduce 4 bright, young, amazing companies. And we shall start with Nathan at the bottom there. Nathan, I'm going to give you about 4 minutes. I will keep you to time, and we're in your hands, sir.
Everyone can hear me, yeah? Yeah, oh, brilliant. So absolute pleasure to be speaking here today. I suppose technically I'm founder CEO, but it's such a small company, I don't really think I would deserve that title. I'm an orthopedic registrar, sort of halfway through my training to become a consultant, and I have created decision support software, which kind of fits in with probably what lots of the rest of you are doing. I'm going to do something a little bit odd. I'm going to share a screen, show a video, and then do a live demo, so nothing could possibly go wrong. Here we go. Everyone see my screen? Yeah. 1 second. So musculoskeletal conditions account for up to 1/3 of all presentations to health services worldwide. There's a great variation in practice as national guidelines are hard to implement locally. If patients do not receive the best decisions at every step of their care pathway, they may have unnecessary clinic appointments, suboptimal management, and, worst of all, poor patient outcomes. Consultants are our best decision makers. However, there are not enough of them to make every decision for every patient at every presentation. Consultant decision making is built upon both evidence and experience, and therefore it's got a pattern. What if there was a way to multiply the impact of your own local expert decision makers? OrthoPathway collects these expert decision-making patterns and delivers them to all your frontline staff through interactive patient care pathways. These pathways are completely customizable to local requirements. Every clinical decision is broken down into small and manageable bite-sized chunks. All staff receive the information they need at the time they need it to support their decision-making. Easily accessible on PC, Mac, and mobile devices. Through giving your experts a megaphone to share their decision-making, clinical practice is standardized to maximize clinical effectiveness. Hospital resources are optimized, and staff feel supported and learn to think like the experts. Face-to-face consultations are reduced as many injuries are discharged to physiotherapy and primary care at first presentation. Patients receive better care. In this current COVID crisis, better decision-making has never been more valuable. Get it right every time. All right, I hope that worked. So what I'm going to do now is show you a live demo. So this is the landing page. It's sort of a white label product bespoke to each hospital trust. So the trust name will be up here, and they have a whole set of pathways that are specific for their institution. And we cover pretty much every presentation that you're going to have from trauma and electives for musculoskeletal injuries. So let's take an example. I'm in the emergency department. I'm a minor injury nurse. I found a patient with an ankle fracture. So what do I do? So is there a dislocation or not? Okay, if there is a severe deformity, this is how I reduce that and put in a plaster. But what if there isn't? So quite often if like bones sticking out through skin, pretty obviously needs an operation. The complex in decision making comes when you've got that grey area where that surgeon, that consultant looks at an x-ray and goes, that one needs an operation. But you don't really know why he said that. So we basically break down every complex decision to a lot of smaller decisions and provide the end users with all the information they need to answer one small question that really guides them through the whole patient journey and enables that the best decision is made at every patient presentation. So for example here, neurological assessment, quite often as an orthopedic reg, I'll ask people over the phone, you know, are they neurologically intact? And quite a lot of the time, if you explore that in depth, they haven't actually examined the patient necessarily or properly. So we're providing all that information at the time they need it to make the best, most informed decisions. So this is us breaking down how we actually decide what to do with an ankle fracture in its smallest components. Not mentioning complex terms like Lau-Johansen classification. This is all happening behind the scenes. We've programmed it with our algorithm to with all the latest evidence in mind. And we've also got things like local or thromboprophylaxis guidance and calculators inbuilt into the pathway. So the end users are given that information that is specific to the local hospital. And at the end, all those decisions are logged, so they can print it off or export it to an EPR, and this forms the basis of their medical clerking. But the real USP of this product is that everything's completely editable. So if you're the chief editor for a trust, it's on the editing mode, you go into that ankle fracture pathway we just saw, and you can edit every component of the pathway. So if you go into the sort of ankle mortis one here, We can edit this and change every component to whatever you want it to be. So you can build up your logic, build up calculators within the calculator. So essentially giving the ability for the consultant experts to program their decision making through this web interface and deliver it to all their frontline staff in a very user-friendly manner. And the way I envision this is built, it's cloud-based, is that you can view the pathways of any other hospital on the platform and import them. So imagine a world where you've got, hospitals in Australia, hospitals in the UK, building the most amazing pathways, and they can share and learn from each other instead of innovating in isolation. So I think, I've probably not got up to 5 minutes, but I've probably done enough here to demo the idea and concept. We're live in 3 NHS hospitals, 10 minor injury units, 3 more hospitals coming on the next few months, and 10 more minor injury units. And we're sort of expanding into other surgical specialties as well, using the same formula. So maxillofacial surgery, plastic surgery, obs and gynae, just to start off with. Thanks very much for your time.
Brilliant, Nathan. Thank you so much. And you were over 5 minutes, but it is rare for me to hear such eloquence from an orthopedic surgeon. It's normally grunts at the other end. I couldn't resist. It's early in the morning. Give me some slack. At the other end of the operating theatre complex to where I am. But no, absolutely stunning. So if I was to do this in 10 seconds rather than just over 5 minutes, I would say Ortho Pathway, consultant orthopedic advice in your pocket 24/7, right care, right time, all of the time. That's it. That's what I would say. That's absolutely brilliant. Right, Tamsin, would you like, they don't know which one I'm going to pick next. I didn't decide. If you want to tell us, and I will hold you to 5 minutes because you could occupy the whole 2 hours and tell us about your passion and drive and commitment in preventing hearing loss in children. I know, but sadly, we have to hear from so many extra things. 5 minutes, Tamsin.
Thank you so much, Tony. I'm just going to share my screen. My name's Tamsin. I've worked for 15 years with a special interest in children with hearing loss. Am I starting to share my screen? Ooh. Sorry, just oh good, starting to share my screen. That's great. Sorry. Is that okay? Can you see that okay?
Perfect, well done.
Great. And I'm founder of Hear Glue Ear. So what we do for children who've got a hearing loss is we spend about a lot of our time looking for the 1 in 1,000 children who are born deaf or develop serious deafness that needs hearing aids or a cochlear implant. But what is taking up the bulk of the work in the background is the 1 in 10 primary school children who have a condition called glue ear, which is simply where they get a bit deaf from getting a cough or a cold or an earache. And you probably all know what that's like, where you have a nasty cold and it blocks up everything and you can't hear for a bit. But as adults, it's okay for us. We're big, so it drains quickly. And also we've already learnt speech and language. We already know how to read, and for children it's completely different. So when they get a coughs and colds, which is and get blocked up, which is simply fluid filling up behind their eardrum, it can affect their speech, language, communication and learning at school. If the glue ear carries on persistently, then we offer a grommet operation, which is simply a tube that goes across the eardrum under a general anaesthetic to drain that fluid. But it takes children on average, and that's in Cambridge where I work, about 12 months to get that grommet operation, and that 12 months is at a critical time in their development. So that's what's been concerning me, that there's one country who have been spectacular in this area, and it's Australia, because you guys don't have the 1 in 10. Your Indigenous children have it's 8 in 10 are affected. And so Australia are the people doing the most extraordinary research, are very strong in this area, and have the research that shows that it affects children's speech and language. They're less likely to do well at school. And interesting, not only does it affect your employment prospects, but it also makes you more likely to go to prison. Because of this, Australia have ring-fenced money, the government has, and made glue ear a medical priority. So I wanted to do the same in England, and these very fetching sort of 80s tennis player type hearing aids, which are great because despite the fact that not everybody loves them because of their look, they don't cover the ears. Sound is simply sent as a vibration through the bones of the skull, and it goes straight to the inner ear, so it misses out the eardrum, which is where the fluid is. But I was told not to do this research because these were too expensive. We were going to put on 1 in 10 children. The NHS couldn't afford it, and neither could parents. So I was devastated for a couple of weeks, and to get a long story short, because I tried to make my own originally, I found some little headphones that were initially being used by the army, and had broken into the sports market, but the reason being that the army could take a phone call, and the phone call would go through the bones of their skull to their inner ear, but they could still hear their colleagues nearby because their ears were still open. Now these were £100 on Amazon, and I thought that I would pair it to a microphone which by Bluetooth, and then trial it on children. The vision would be that children would be able to hear in that first picture, so the teacher could in fact wear the microphone rather than hold it, and that a teacher or a speech and language therapist or a parent could wear the microphone and a child could hear while they had glue ear. And in the second picture, that perhaps we could have hearing games, listening games, information for parents, ways to help children, support children's development if we connected the headphone to an app. So that's what I wanted to create. So the first thing I did was trial these headphones on children, little 3 to 6 year old children who had glue ear, and they were able to hear speech, quiet speech with the headphones on. And that was statistically significant. And my immediate thought was that I needed to get straight to Australia. So we worked extra shifts, and we had to take the children because they were really little. And we went to Australia and said, what do you guys think of this? Because Australia had ring-fence money, they were able to use the expensive equipment, but were very interested to have something more affordable and to have a better offer. I also came back, I developed an app. The app has a hearing screen on it, a speech and language therapy, enriching speech and language, things such as audiobooks and games and songs. Trialed it with some families back here, and they 73% of them downloaded the app at home, showing that there was a need. During COVID, grommet operations have been cancelled, so there is no permanent solution just at the moment, and that meant that I set up a study sending the whole product set, the microphone and the headset, as well as details about the app, to families through the post. And they haven't got any results yet, so this is my latest email, get these lovely emails, so it's like a joy to do this study. And interestingly, the app has gained a lot of traction itself, and been recommended by NICE and some of the national hearing bodies. The market size is big, not just because of the children that get glue ear, but because glue ear also affects children who have Down syndrome and craniofacial problems.
I'm going to ask you to just have your last few remarks, please.
Just to say thank you for this opportunity to speak to you.
You're amazing, Tamsin, and I let you have, if I let an orthopaedic surgeon overrun, I'm definitely going to let you overrun. Forgive me, my Australian colleagues and friends, for being so poor on timekeeping, but I'm so excited. Imagine that, COVID's come along, I think it was 30,000 roughly grommet operations a year in our country, and the bits of the brain that need to develop in that time will not develop if we don't solve this problem. And Forward has set a paediatrician in the National Health Service with a tech and digital health solution to help our children to hear. Wow, I think you're inspiring, Tamsin. It's a pleasure and joy to have you on our programme, and I'm going to work with you more to get your pitch on time. Right, I told you, friendly criticism, come back all the time. That's really good. Ash, let's have you up next, sir. I'm going to hold you to time. Off you go.
Thank you very much. I'll assume you can see my slides, hopefully.
Yes, we can.
Brilliant. So again, thank you so much for having me, everyone, today. My name's Ash. I'm also an orthopedic surgeon by trade, just to make Tony's day even more brighter. I'm founder and CEO of MediShout, and I just want to start with our first screen because this is our core team, of which 60% of us on the screen are actually on the entrepreneur program in one way, shape, or form. So Ali Bassoon's our chief product officer. He was working at a company called Touch Surgery, who sold to Medtronic earlier on this year for, we think, in the region of $500 million, but it was something big. And Chris Howie, who's our NED, he actually used to work for DIT in the UK. So about MediShout, well, what is our vision? Well, we've created a digital solution that resolves all the operational issues that happen in healthcare, and that's so staff can actually focus on patient care. So the first thing is to talk about the problem. I'm a surgeon. Last year, I actually cancelled 3 operations one morning because there was a light bulb in theatre broken, and staff had known about it but just hadn't reported this. And every clinician that's listening in today will remember similar problems. Your printer's broken, you don't have the right stock or the right equipment, the light bulb is broken, as I mentioned, and yet to get any of these issues resolved is actually really difficult. And the impact is massive. So from the NHS, up to 1/3 of our nurses are wasting 2 hours per shift just looking for missing kit. International studies have shown that clinicians are only spending 1/3 of their time actually with patients. And this was a big one. This was pre-COVID. In the NHS, we've had a 30% increase in cancelled operations because of problems such as faulty equipment. So I created MediShout to solve this huge problem, and we do this in 3 simple ways. It's a digital product. We've created the first app in healthcare where healthcare staff can report any operational or logistical problem they come across. So whether it's IT, estates, facilities, equipment, you just type in your problem, you add a photo, you press send, and that will go to the relevant help desk or person. We actually have paying customers from 2 of the world's top 20 global equipment suppliers because they recognize that actually our platform helps them as well. So the workflow is really, really quite simple. So if you're healthcare staff in a hospital or a pharmacy or in a GP, and you have any logistical or operational problem, so PPE, equipment, stock, whatever it might be, you report it with the app. It gets resolved locally by internal help desks or local suppliers or healthcare managers. And what's really important is the next stage of how we help the whole process is about the data that we collect. So I mentioned before how I'd cancelled operations because of a broken light bulb. If I reported that through MediShout, what would happen is I'd say light bulb was broken, and it would then ask me questions such as what was the impact? And if I said I've cancelled operations, that will flag that to the system so they know, wow, we have to really get this problem resolved pronto so that we don't impact patient care. And then moving beyond that, we're now using AI predictive analytics to actually predict problems before they happen. So this was an example where we predicted when an ECG machine was going to break down, and we were accurate within 3 days. We have lots of upcoming product launches, so chatbot functionality where staff will be able to self-resolve problems. We're going to allow patients to start reporting things they see around the hospital. We've lots of proven benefits. We've shown we can save £1 million per NHS trust every year. We save time for staff. We've just published data because during COVID, we actually helped Imperial College improve their PPE allocation. We're working with some of the hospitals with Tony Young. We're helping with the COVID risk assessments as well at the moment. So just a final slide, I have to say huge thanks to the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme. Our company would have definitely died a long time ago without it, but we've had a really great year. We've had 3 fundraisers. The most recent one was for £1 million just last week. We've published our data in all sorts of different journals and healthcare sort of magazines as well. I think the thing for me that the entrepreneur program has really helped with. It was education in the first instance to understand about business, and then opened up a network of mentors to help me through different processes of things I didn't understand. And then the final thing was actually putting me in touch with people who want to actually use our product, trial it, and then now start to purchase it. So it's been, 4 to 5 years in the program, and we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are without Professor Young and all the help it's given us. If anyone wants to get in contact with me, ash@medishout.co.uk, or Twitter, just @medishout for any more information.
Thank you, Ash. That was brilliant, and you were just under time. Well done. We'll make, David, we can make the slides available from everyone's presentations this morning. I see, every time I see a presentation, there's something else about drone deliveries. So I haven't got them on here today, and not for tweeting, but one of our startups. Next week, our science minister, I'm hoping, will make an announcement about our project, a grand project on autonomous drone deliveries. Could we create a national grid of secure flight corridors to allow drone logistics across the NHS? Ooh, watch this space, see what happens next week with our science minister, and that announcement could be really good. I'm not predicting what it may not happen, who knows. Right, okay, last but by no means least, Ed, do you want to tell about the amazing and important work you've been doing?
Yes, thanks, Tony. So I had a slide deck, but I like Nathan's quick demo. So I thought, actually, this is going to be better. So I'm Ed St. John. I'm a recent new consultant breast surgeon. I'm trained in general surgery. I've been on the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Programme, mentored by Tony since 2016. And I'm going to tell you about Concentric Health. So hopefully you can see my screen. So this is our website. So here's the problem. 300 million operations are done per year worldwide. And most of those are done using a paper-based method, and more specifically, a paper-based consent method. So you need to get consent when you're consenting for a difficult procedure and operation. And the problem about paper is that it's filled out very badly and it's very variable. So if I see one consultant versus another consultant, or one junior doctor versus another junior doctor, I get different information. And as a patient, when I'm trying to decide, do I want to undergo this operation, or do I want to undergo another operation, or do I not want to have an operation at all? That's pretty dangerous. So here's Concentric Health, and we are digitalizing how you consent patients and how we empower our patients to make decisions. So if I skip quickly to a demo, I think this will it speaks for itself really. So we've white labeled this again, so each trust can have their own logo, and this is being used. We've had actually exponential growth since COVID, and I'll explain why. But these are all test patients, so none of these are real patients. But let's say I'm going to consent Joan Bloggs. I'm going to make a new episode. I'm a breast surgeon. I'll do a mastectomy. She's going to have a simple mastectomy. We've got a global leading ontology database, pan surgery. So any operation, any specialty, you name it, we've got it. And that means we can go across all hospitals very quickly. And actually we can go into primary care as well. So we can facilitate minor ops, but we're also doing oncology, we're doing radiotherapy, we're doing drugs, and we've got some use cases of that as well. So let's say we're doing a simple mastectomy. It's going to be left side. It's going to be assigned to me. We're doing it because she's got invasive ductal breast cancer. And here we write the alternatives. That's really important. So there's case law in the UK, but also worldwide, saying that we should be discussing alternatives with our patients. And the current forms that most people are using just don't have this level of information. Here we're saying the purposes, and of course, each patient's an individual, and we need to be able to tailor these. So if we need to do custom purposes, we can. So it's a general anesthetic in this case, and we've got all the risks. Now, I can bespoke these, or I can select all, but if, for example, in this patient, incomplete excision is not important, I can remove that. If I want to add a custom risk, I can. So let's say it's a high risk and I want to put death due to anesthesia, I can put that in, and add that risk, and that goes in. And then we've got media, so we can link to internal media that the hospital already has, or we can link to external media. So we took the view that as a digital health company, there is so much good information already out there for a lot of these operations, that to build our own content for each operation seems ludicrous when so much good information already exists. Instead, we curate and signpost people to the right things. So HCI have videos about the procedure. Breast Cancer Now is our leading UK breast cancer charity. And then I can also do consent for medical imaging or tissue research. But then I've got several options. We can go into consult view, and this is what the patient sees. So they get emailed a copy of this. They can look at it whenever they want, but we can tell them, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? They've got the links. What are the other options we considered? We can write notes. Do they have allergies? What's a general anaesthetic about? They can have the links to the Royal College of Anaesthetists for the UK. We could link that to Australian-based links if we needed to. Here we go, immediate risks. It's all shown with nice infographics. The patients can read about it. Click on these drop downs. Each risk is written in lay information so that they can understand it. So skipping on quickly, they've got the links to the media that we've signposted them for, which are procedure specific. They're ready to consent. Let's say it's less than 24 hours. And we're going to speed past this. They consent to the blood transfusion. And here we go. This is a nice bit of technology. Immediately, if I've done this on the desktop in clinic, we can hand this straight over to their own mobile device or the clinician's device or the iPad. Or we could do it on the screen with a mouse if we want. Or we can email this direct to the patient and they can open it on their own device. We can send it virtually. And I think we're the first provider in the UK to be able to send this virtually. So sorry, I should have just completed that to show you what it looked like. But I'll do a little signature there and I'll consent. So then the patient gets a copy in our system, which is cloud-based, and it doesn't need to integrate to the existing healthcare provider, although we can also. You've got a fully compliant pathway that you can bring up the consent on the day of surgery and proceed to an operation. So just in summary, our feedback has been fantastic. The patients love it, the clinicians love it, and we have been growing exponentially in the last few months, particularly due to COVID, because we can offer virtual consent. This means that we can facilitate the COVID-like pathways. And we're now moving into Australia. We've got several people we're working with in Brisbane. So we're really interested to do more in Australia. So please let us know.
Brilliant, Ed, and thank you so much. That progresses each time I see it. So what I hope colleagues from Australia have seen, that I have actually managed to train out that inbred British reserve. And you've seen clinicians who are passionate and committed. In fact, they could be Australians, they're so passionate in what they're doing. So this was pitched to me by David as a kind of a pitch-off between the United Kingdom and Australia, or a battle of the bands, if you like. So now what I'm going to do is hand over to Bronwyn and say, I did cheat a little bit because I bought 4 on my team and you've got 3. But I know your 3 are all going to be knockout. So I'm looking to hearing from them, Bronwyn.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks to all the teams from the UK. It is always really cool to hear entrepreneurs that are developing in different systems and also often looking at problems that we know are universal across the world. So great work, and I'm glad that you're all enjoying your new lives as clinician entrepreneurs. So we've got 3 companies with us today, and I will introduce them briefly, and I'm going to in very simplistic form, I'm going to go in alphabetical order. So I'm going to start with CancerAid, and Zachary Tan is here with us. Dr. Zachary Tan, who's the Chief Strategy Officer of CancerAid. And CancerAid were in our financial year 2019 cohort, I think. Zach, was it 2019?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. All right, over to you, Zach. Do I need to time you, Zach, or are you gonna be all right?
I'll be speedy.
Okay, no worries.
I'll chime in if needed, Bronwyn. It's all right.
Thank you so much, everyone. Good day. Lovely to sort of join everyone today on this webinar. Can you guys see my screen all right?
We've got your presenter view, Zach, not your full
Got my
screen.
presenter view. I'll share it.
I have the same issue on my dual monitors. There you go. You're good now.
Perfect. Thanks so much, everyone. Well, g'day. It's wonderful today to share some of our work at CATSAID. Wonderful to hear in particular about the NHS Clinician Entrepreneur Program. I'm also a medic and clinician by background, and certainly many challenges which Professor Young spoke about, managing or juggling clinical practice and entrepreneurship are ones which resonate very, very deeply with me. CATSAID was founded very much as a product of our clinical practice. As a clinician, and certainly as part of my wider team, we have sort of oncologists. Often we see patients who come to the clinic who really understand their disease. They're the ones who take notes. They're the ones who've done the Google Scholar searches and have ring binders sort of full of information. Now, typically from our anecdotal experience, these are the patients who are doing better from a clinical outcome point of view. However, and I think the sort of great shame about it is not all patients have access to the same support structures and systems. And our vision at CATSAID is to really democratize these systems and the support, and very ambitiously long term to transform the patient experience of living with cancer. Now, in terms of the sort of epidemiology of cancer, so the economic implications of cancer care are enormous. The incidence of cancer itself is increasing. We are getting better at earlier diagnosis as well as treatment, but there is an enormous increase in the costs related to management of these patients. What we know as well is that poor patient engagement leads to worse off outcomes and increased costs. And these costs are related to higher rates of admissions, increased insurance premiums, reduced return to work, and reduced drug adherence and compliance. And these costs are incurred by insurers, employers, and pharmaceutical companies who are our customers. Now, the core mission, the core concept that we believe in as a team is that of participatory health. And again, I think this is a concept which would resonate very much with a lot of the audience here today. That is, if patients are more active participants in their own healthcare, they're more engaged in their own healthcare, they are likely to achieve better outcomes as well as lower costs. Now, there are many different ways to measure this. There's a lot out there in the literature, but certainly what we quite like is this particular matrix where patients can be graded upon their degree of health engagement from level 1, where they are very much passive consumers of their own healthcare, to level 4, where they are very much active partners and advocates for themselves. And along the spectrum, towards the right-hand side of your screen, patients achieve better outcomes and are able to receive care at lower costs. Now, as clinicians, we went to the literature and we found that changing behaviours such that patients were more engaged in their own healthcare is a complex and difficult process. Interventions, which were based on personalised coaching, were certainly ones when we looked at the literature as being much more effective, or being most effective, rather than nudges or cash-based incentives in isolation. In this context, we built the CATSAID Coach Program. So the Coach Program is a technology-enabled health coaching program for people living with cancer. CATSAID has its own team of human health coaches who are cancer nurses by background, who we assign to patients who come to us and then communicate and provide support to patients over the course of their cancer journey. We also run our patients through a series of evidence-based modules related to cancer survivorship, including symptom management, exercise, diet, nutrition, sleep, and anxiety. Now, this program is different to run-of-the-mill health education, as the focus is very much on health coaching and behaviour change. And there's elements of accountability, which we sort of instill into our curriculum to drive behaviour change. We like to think of our program as really a technology-enabled service where we have a tech and touch approach, the sort of human touch of having our health coaches who are essential in driving empathy as well as engagement, but also the scalability and automation of our technology, which enables us to provide services and care to many more patients than we otherwise may normally would be able to. This is just another schema of the CATSAID Coach Program patient journey. We use multiple different channels to engage our patients. We provide hyper-personalised insights and drive clinically meaningful behaviour change. We've been very fortunate over the last 18 months to work with a large variety of insurers and employers, as well as pharma companies in Australia, as well as the wider APAC region. And this is my last slide. We're very fortunate to have had some really resounding and positive outcomes to date. So we have sort of fantastic patient satisfaction scores. Patients stay very much engaged as part of our program. And we're able as well to demonstrate health, economic and commercial outcomes for our partners. That's a very quick and speedy summary of CancerAid, but certainly if you have any questions, I'll be delighted to have a chat offline.
Thanks, Zach. That was awesome. 5 minutes and 15 seconds. Spot on, buddy. So interestingly, I said our founders come from anywhere. So CancerAid, when I did go out some companies for today's session, I did want to pick companies that reflected the diversity of our founders. So CancerAid is a clinician-founded organisation and company, and we're going to move on to PX Health, founded by two guys who actually, and Hugo's lovely, so be kind, came to us from private equity and have entered the healthcare sector with much success. So we welcome all kinds. As a VC, I really shouldn't be giving Hugo a hard time for probably working in private equity, but you know. So Hugo Rourke's the co-CEO of PX Health, and they work in adherence. And then our final company was actually a clinician and researcher founded company. So we've got a bit of a diversity. So we'll go to PX now. Hugo, over to you.
Great, fantastic. Thanks, Bron. And I'll just get my slide share happening. So give me a sec while I do that. And if anyone can give me a thumbs up or something when this is hopefully working perfectly. Yep, thumbs up all around. Well, I wish I was actually from private equity, but the truth is I'm not. I'm from consumer promotions, loyalty and gaming, which may feel like private equity and evil to some people. But my partner is from private equity, so maybe that's where we get the brand mark from. In terms of what we do at Perks, we're on a mission to build the world's most engaging platform for managing chronic conditions. And so on our team, we have people with backgrounds in other consumer industries, from games and gaming, from building some of the top banking apps. And as much as you love to hate the banks, their apps are pretty functional and useful to use every day, and a lot better than most healthcare apps, let's be honest. And on my team, we have behavioural economists, so all sorts of people from Stan, which is like the Netflix of Australia. So really the people who live and breathe making great, engaging platforms from other industries. And so we apply this to healthcare. But a bit of a background on our company. Everything we do, we build with love and care for our end users, the patients, right here in Sydney, Australia. And I've got the sun setting behind me, and if you look out there somewhere, there's probably the Harbour Bridge. We serve customers across both Australia and the US, and typically we focus on payers and providers. Now in the UK, the payer and the provider is very much the same thing, although maybe if you split out trust versus CCGs, etc., then it's slightly different. But in Australia, it's a bit more of a complex landscape. And of course, in the US, there's pure private payers. And again, there's all sorts of models under the sun. But that's typically where we look to partner, and we serve about a dozen of those large healthcare type companies in both markets. And then in Australia, we're backed by both the Federal Department of Health and the New South Wales State Health Department as a pioneer in digital health. So if there's anyone from those organisations out there, thank you for support, and we are stoked with your support and how far we are moving forward with that support. But to kind of tell you what the problem is, after 10 years of implementing digital health in the US, which happens to be a bit further ahead than the rest of us around the world, what they've realized is that digital health has a huge engagement problem. So if you interview the top 25 US health plans, as Rand Health did, they will tell you that the number one problem they face when rolling out condition care programs, for whether it's for chronic disease or musculoskeletal rehab, etc., is that people don't engage with the product. So you can have the world's best content with the world's best clinicians, but if people don't engage, it's all for nothing. And that's what they've discovered in those 10 years. So at Perks, we want to help you skip that learning and get straight to the point where you've got engaged patients using the best evidence-based care with the best clinicians possible. And so the question that we face every day is how do you make an intervention that actually gets people engaged when they're at home, that they love to step away from whatever else they're doing and going look after their health daily. And at Perks, we have the solution for that exact problem, and we apply it in all sorts of different areas, whether it's mental health, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and even musculoskeletal rehab. And what we've built is a platform that delivers daily engagement for daily condition management. And you can see we come at this from a different angle from your average clinician. We're not specific about a disease, I guess, because we recognise that most people probably have comorbidities. And so a single disease solution is probably not going to work for the majority of at least your higher risk healthcare consumers. But the three pillars to our platform are firstly, making a solution that is comprehensive in the way it supports people's with conditions. So whether it's managing meds, physio, appointments, managing their pharmacy scripts, all of it can be done in the one app. Ultimately, it's about making it as easy as possible for that end patient to do the right thing for their health. And that's kind of lesson one of helping people form habits and make good choices when it comes to their behaviour. The second thing we do is we make a super engaging tool that people actually want to use, and we use behavioural science and habit science to do that. And I'll talk more on this today because I think it's the most important thing that I'm excited to share with you. The final piece, and what And Health, to their credit, pushed us on when we were part of their program, is that we have to show that we can improve behaviour and outcomes scientifically. And so I'm glad that Bron showed the example of what a digital therapeutic is before, because Perks is a digital therapeutic that's proven to improve behaviour and outcomes. We work with a variety of partners like the University of Sydney, the University of Technology, and the University of South Australia to capture those outcomes and show that we're improving outcomes in areas as varied as mental health and diabetes. So what does that actually look like? Well, the first thing I can share with you is that Perks is a product that people use like it's a social media app. They're in there every day using it for their health. And indeed, when you compare us to some of the big boys in this territory, people use our platform more often than they use Facebook or Twitter. And if you want to be there helping people every day, then that's really important. The second part of what we do is we personalize all the different tactics under the sun that have worked so well for consumers to engage each individual. So whether it's challenges, coaching, rewards, gameplay, or peer support, we bring that all to chronic condition management. We recognise that different people are motivated in different ways. And if you think about the people you know who have chronic conditions, I bet some of them are competitive, while some of them want peer support, and some of them love a free item. And so what we do is we use some algorithms in the background to figure out what's working for you as an individual to get precision behaviour change. So to actually make sure that people are getting the best outcomes possible for them as an individual. Why does all this matter? Well, engagement is critical, and we believe it's going to be the superpower needed to achieve the promise of digital health. And so much of what we've heard today is about that promise of how digital health can reshape patient experiences and clinician workflows. But for us, one of the core things we believe at Perks is that healthcare shouldn't leave anyone behind. And in particular, if you're the NHS who deals with the full population of the UK, you'll realise this. Typical solutions often leave behind people with poor health literacy, lower socioeconomic background, age, or complex comorbidity, whereas the Perks solution is built exactly for that type of cohort. And so we don't leave patients behind when we run programs with our partners in health insurance, life insurance, or workers' compensation insurance, as well as public health here with New South Wales Health in Australia. The second thing we do is we actually assure the triple aim of healthcare. So too often we think first about how do we get the outcomes and costs and get people on evidence-based care, but without thinking how do we make a great experience such that they want to stick with that care. So we assure that triple aim and make sure it actually falls out the end when you're using world-leading therapies and doctors. The final piece, and I know Bron will want me to wrap up soon, is that we deliver value-based care. So at Perks, we're big believers in gain sharing on outcomes achieved, such as HbA1c reductions. And the best thing is, because people are using our platform every day, we can actually track in real time how they're improving and share that back to you. So you know how they're going as a patient. There's so much more to share on Perks, but I can't do it in a brief 5-minute pitch. Maybe I'm not tight enough, but what we're doing is building the world's most engaging platform for chronic condition management. If you found what I spoke about interesting today, whether it's how to apply behavioural science to the problem of condition management, or you yourself are facing cohorts of people who struggle with traditional or even new digital chronic disease management programs because they fail to engage, then please reach out to me. We'd love to help. And all we care about is making sure that everyone gets the best experience and the most engaging experience for their healthcare.
Thanks, Hugo. You were a couple of minutes over, but you were very engaging. Therefore, I let you run over. Hey, I love the new slide deck. This is so good for me, for everyone that watches. I never get to see our alumni pitch, so it's actually really fun for me to see how they've progressed since I last saw them. And we're going to finish up with Kyle Slater from CA Medical. Kyle, I ask everyone to be very forgiving of Kyle. Kyle's the Chief Product Officer at CA. He's had to stand in with literally less than 24 hours notice as Dean Freestone, the CEO, had embarked on his parental leave. He's just had a baby girl, which is very exciting. Poor Kyle's had to step in at the last minute, but Kyle is the Chief Product Officer of CA Medical from our first cohort in financial year 2018. And Kyle, I'll hand it over to you.
All right, thanks very much, Bronwyn, and thanks everyone for the presentations. A lot to live up to there. Well, yeah, as Bronwyn said, my name's Kyle Slater. I'm the Chief Product Officer at CA Medical. So just to jump straight in, this is what epilepsy diagnostics look like, the sort of gold standard diagnostic back in 2016. If you're unfortunate enough to have an event, you may have found yourself tethered to a hospital bed for a week, not able to shower. It's quite uncomfortable considering the intermittency of epilepsy. Zooming forward to 2019, this is what CA Medical is providing right now. It's a full ambulatory device that they can take home. We've integrated a magnetic connection system that allows patients to disconnect and take a shower, which is a big thing for the patients. So we've successfully been able to translate from the hospital to the home just using existing systems, and this is all hinged on our cloud platform. So going forward to 2020, we've spent the last couple of years investing in our own product design, and I've been leading that effort. This is the CA Sense, and I'll talk more about it in a second, but it's a really revolutionary product that we're excited to begin delivering this year. All right, so our footprint, we are not just providing a product, we're actually delivering a service. So we have 7 permanent clinics around Australia, 14 visiting clinics, so these are remote clinics, and 130 staff now, and that number keeps on growing. As Bronwyn mentioned before, hard to keep up. So this is all driven by a very strong demand for our service. It was clear that we'd hit on something that was needed. The quarterly referrals just continue to grow, and Q3 is no different. In fact, the current state of affairs has sort of drummed home the importance of at-home services, such as our epilepsy diagnostic service. We've now helped 4,300 patients nationally. All right, but to scale this kind of service, we need to think about our fleet and our hardware as well. And this means growing an expensive fleet and managing that nationally. This graph just shows what we've been able to achieve there, not just by sort of getting more people, but by actually innovating the product and making it easier to manufacture. We're now manufacturing at a rate far greater than 2018 or 2019, and this is what we need in order to propel into the global market. So along sort of the journey of scaling our technology, we've built a number of individual items. On the left, you've got the Hub V2, which is a camera and ECG aggregation system that beams the data up to our cloud infrastructure. We've wrapped up all the patient consumables into a neat pack, which does make a big difference for our efficiencies. We have technology like QuickScan to check the quality of the electrodes, make sure they're wired correctly. This water tabs was actually not just an innovation in design, but we actually developed a new manufacturing method in-house to produce this water-soluble adhesive that is far less aggressive than the solvent-based glues that are used traditionally. And finally, CA Sense, which is really our flagship product. So we took this from concept through to production in 2 years. We've had to build our own manufacturing facility. It's an ISO 13485 compliant facility, and very proud to have been awarded a Good Design Gold Award for this recently. But just pausing on this, you can see the stark contrast between what we're able to deliver with this kind of technology compared to what you saw on the very first slide. But what we want to move towards is towards productization. So this is really taking those technologies, putting them into a product that we can, that will allow clinics all around the world to supercharge their epilepsy diagnostics so that they can provide the same quality service we do here in Australia. This is what it looks like when you sort of lay it out on a table. And we're very excited, and the timing couldn't have been better for this presentation to have shipped our first system to King's College in London. That's going to be a very pivotal trial for us to see how they use our system, to see if they're happy with it, to learn, to improve, and hopefully to get our very first overseas customer. All right, so Seer Medical has really taken 4 distinct areas: cloud infrastructure, product design and manufacturing, machine learning, and clinical services. And it's combined these to create a full stack team capable of delivering a service, but also putting together a product. And it's a real testament to And Health, who helped that strategy at the early stages of the company to help see that what we really wanted to do was empower patients, and there were many steps in between. And we needed to be very smart about those steps in order to get to our ultimate goal. All right, so thanks very much.
Thanks, Kyle. It was awesome. Well done on a very last minute stand-in too. So awesome pitch. And that kit is looking super amazing. So I'm now gonna, when I'm allowed to, I'll pop down to Parkville and stick my head in again. You know, when I'm allowed to cross the regional metro border. David, so that's my teams. So it's over to you, I think, isn't it?
It is indeed. And thank you, Bronwyn, and thank you, Tony, and thank you to all of our entrepreneurs. What a fascinating insight into how people are thinking about things differently to what we've always thought about it. I always love these sessions. Tony, I don't think it was a competition. I don't think I ever framed it as a competition. In the true spirit of recent cricket results, for example, we won the one-day series. You guys won the T20. I think we can call that a draw, even though you had 4-3 in terms of numbers. What I'd love to do now is really throw it open. We've got about 100 people on the call who've been listening in. I'm really keen for them to throw any questions either directly to our entrepreneurs, if they have any questions for them, or indeed to Bronwyn and Tony. I'm sure they're more than happy to field a question or two. I'll try and get a couple of short balls in for you, Tony, and just check out how you are with some chin music, and see where we get to. I know Roger Woodward has been prolific on the questions, but I might start with a really practical one. Stephen Law Lyons asks, hi Kyle, have you already established a UK-based distributor? Let me know if we can help. Here we are. We're already trying to find ways to help and get involved.
Sorry, did you want me to respond now?
Yeah, absolutely. Have you got a UK distributor?
Right,
where are you up to?
That's an interesting question. No, we do actually have an office set up in Germany, which has been interesting, and the timing has been very difficult, as Bronwyn mentioned earlier, just in terms of getting our distribution happening. At this stage, it's our connections with the hospitals, with King's College and so forth, that are acting as sort of trial sites, but we are looking for partners. So absolutely would love to hear from anyone interested in that.
And probably not to give the game away, I believe that Seer had senior management moving to the UK when COVID hit, like literally moving, and they kind of got to the airport and went, maybe that's not a good idea. So that has definitely slowed that down. But that's the reality. But I think if you guys can facilitate any partners for any of the companies, that'd be great.
So let's do a trade deal, not wait for the 31st of December and Brexit. Let's do it right now. I've been super stunned by the presentations from Australia, and just why haven't we done this before? Why have we not linked up two great nations who their clinicians, their industry, their government, their support services All right. I mean, honestly, it is like different siblings in the same family, isn't it? I mean, it's unbelievable what I've seen. The 3 presentations from Australia today, I want all of them. Okay. So I'm prepared to put some skin in the game and say, we will find a way of landing these things in the UK. It's not going to be a love up. It's going to be a tough love session. But it'll be very practical, very supportive advice. So we'll take that conversation offline. David, I'll work with colleagues at the Department of International Trade. You know, Carl, the passion and commitment and the drive for solving. Do you know there are tens of thousands of problems that need to be solved in healthcare? And someone earlier was saying that I think it was you, Hugo, about. You know, loads of digital health stuff out there just not being taken up, and trying to uncover insights on what's going on. And it's been out there for a long time. And I think one of the things that has been missing is that excellence through partnership and coordination that we so need to drive it. Because if Australian companies can build a success in the UK, and UK companies can do the same in Australia, do you know, we can take on the rest of the world, and it will make a difference to people's healthcare across our planet. Do you know, I love what you've done in epilepsy, Carl. I just wanted it straight away, and I haven't seen anything like that. So I see 1,000 new products and services across the world each year come to me at NHS England to tell me about their stuff. I was blown away by that, and in fairness, blown away by the other things too. So let's definitely take offline from this conversation, David, how we can help find the right landing pad in the United Kingdom for that. And I know, David, we're in conversations about how we do the same vice versa too. So, yeah, but let's just have a constructive outcome from this. Brilliant, loved it.
And Tony, on that note, we'll bring in the rest of the alumni as well, because I was told I was only allowed 3.
I'm super excited.
I've only got 2 hours. We could have done this for a month.
Let's seriously take this forward, Bronwyn. I would like let's have a call after this at some point. Let's talk about our prospective programs, talk about how we can work together. I'd like to see David, as an output metric here for you, for these little conversations you're having, when we next come back, let's see how many Australians have set up a UK entity and how many UK companies have set up an Australian entity. Absolutely. And let's get that health technology bridge between the 2 nations really flowing with trade.
That's certainly our intent, as you well know, Tony, and you're basically stealing all my thunder, so thank you for that. It's great to have somebody who's passionate and supportive, as you are, as is Bronwyn. And you know, when I think back to what we did last year when we came to the UK, and I'm going to try and embarrass Tony now, but everybody walked away from a session. We took a digital healthcare catalyst program to the UK. Tony spoke to us in London, and all everybody spoke about for the whole week is, how do we get Tony to come to Australia? He's just so full of energy and passion, and you know, this could be terrific. So we've been doing this virtually because that's what we can do at the moment. But you know, it's terrific to have the ability with Bronwyn and MTP Connect and others here, and finding that way to build that opportunity. That's what we're about. That's what we're trying to achieve, and there'll be more on that soon, I hope. Fingers crossed. There's a lot of work going in the background around that. But keen to hear other questions and get other views. I know that there's a couple of things here which are probably sort of practical ones, which perhaps Tony, you jump in on, or Bronwyn. What are you seeing in terms of the architecture? You know, Tony, you've spoken about how did we empower clinicians to be entrepreneurs, and Bronwyn, obviously you're looking at a much more focused array and trying to tackle the people that come through your incubator. How do we get them the right skills? So how do we get clinicians to be entrepreneurial? How do we get people who have a great idea the skills to do what they need to do? And yeah, just because you're a clinician and you can see that artificial intelligence could really help me, or machine learning could really help me, as and perhaps a couple of the entrepreneurs might want to pipe in on this, because clearly they've had those thoughts. You know, the musculoskeletal system up there earlier, and here's what how do you teach somebody or get them connected to the skills that allows this to actually come to fruition? Tony, do you want to start off, and then perhaps we get
Okay,
a couple others to join in, Nathan and others?
To hear the thoughts of others too, David. I think, do you know, I think you could spend a long time talking about this. I'm going to pick one thing that has been absolutely crucial. Now, I don't know what your take on politicians and government are in Australia. I couldn't possibly comment. I don't keep up to the latest on those things. It's fast enough moving here. But do you know, our government and politicians have been so super supportive of what we're doing, and that blessing and permission from the top. If you then have effective organisations within the system, effective individuals within those organisations that can help create the culture, but if you haven't got that air cover, that support from the top of government to get on it, and our Secretary of State in the United Kingdom has been, I mean, he has taken, so we've got, I think he was on last time, Krish Ramdu with his digital otoscope. Matt Hancock has inspected my eardrum, ready to suck out the earwax from it without damaging my hearing on it. And when you get that kind of blessing from the top, that support, then everyone else in the system tends to line up and say, we can kind of make this happen. Now, other people will have other views on how you support that, but I would say leaders, politicians, people in government, if they really step forward and say, they put their arm around you, on your shoulder, and say, we're supporting them, we're standing by them, we're right here with you, it's been one of the most critical factors for me.
Thanks, Tony. And Nathan, did you want to give me a bit of insight from the practicalities of how you got to where you've got to? I'm assuming you're not a tech genius as well as a clinician.
No, I'm definitely not a tech genius. Wow. So I probably started this journey a couple of years ago. It just felt like it was the right thing to do. I was seeing the same problems over and over again. I looked into how I would go about building what I saw as my solution, and I kept getting quotes of £50,000-60,000 to go and build an MVP, which in theory, what it is now was a lot more than what I thought it was going to be. So I thought, well, I don't have that sort of money. So I thought, how hard could it be to go and make this sort of thing? So I think I spent about a year learning how to code, and I built the MVP, and now I'm at a stage where I've got engineers working with me, but we're now a team, so I control deployment, and I read every line of code that goes into it and approve it. So I'm sort of wearing two hats there, but I'm stepping my foot off the accelerator in terms of raw engineering, because I recognize I'm never going to be, the best at it in the world, because I don't do it all the time. But no, it's been really hard. I think I say this a lot, but what I really got from the entrepreneur program is the real importance of winning hearts and minds. I say this a lot, but it's so important. You've really got to go grassroots up, find your champions, people that really, you feel a bit crazy when you've got a new idea. Definitely, I felt crazy for a long time. And if you see other people see your idea and solution as valuable, you start realizing you're not actually crazy. And then they start fighting their own battles to get your idea into reality. Because all we ever want to do is make something that's useful. I suppose that might help answer that question, but I'll leave the floor to someone else.
Bronwyn, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, right? Because we spend a lot of time talking about skills, and there's surveys and reports and whatever about skills. And I always come at this from a slightly different background, because I have a business and law background, and I've been in life sciences for 20 years. So I think one of the things that we need to do is bring in people with different skill sets. So rather than trying to say the scientists need to do MBAs and law degrees and learn how to be lawyers and business people, why don't we go to the best of the business schools and bring those guys into the tech sector and get them comfortable in the painfully slow revenue, cash flow burning models of life sciences, right? So my view is, we have skills, we just don't, we're really bad in Australia, in my view, over 20 years of bringing them in. I'm still one of the only non-science or engineering background people I know doing what I do. So, you know, Hugo with his ex-McKinsey background, I do know Hugo, I just love throwing the PE line in. It's usually Scott. So, but, you know, we bring in people. I've worked with patient founders who are engineers and, you know, we've taken their businesses global. You know, it is all about wrapping other people and multitudes of skill sets around them. I couldn't do And Health without the rest of the team. And many of you might have met Grace Leffley, my co-founder and our chief program officer. And, you know, she is passionate about delivering these programs at work. I really just turn up now and go, hi, everybody, and then do some case studies. So we all need, and I hired Grace as my first employee because her skill set is nothing like mine. She's a biomedical scientist with a chemical engineering degree, right? So she's as far away from me as possible. That's what we need to do. We can solve the skill set by attracting people from different sectors into health. Digital health it needs design, it needs social science, it's consumer behavior. To Hugo's point, gamification. To all of their points, it's all about engagement and doing stuff that works better for consumers. A lot of that stuff's not naturally found in science. It's found in other sectors. So we need to get out there and sell ourselves as a sector that people want to work in. So it's a slightly different view.
Sorry, David, I'm just going to chip in. Bronwyn, I absolutely love what you said. So that diversity of thought, it comes not just from different sectors, but the different backgrounds and the perspectives they bring for it. You've hit the nail bang on the head. Diversity.
I'm going to quote, you've just said diversity. I'm going to quote someone else, Tony. Sorry, you just triggered it. Megan Robertson from St Vincent's Health in Melbourne. If you don't have cognitive diversity in your company, you are creating a self-affirming bubble, and they don't go anywhere.
You get 2 thumbs up for that, Bronwyn. That's it.
I have to say, I don't think I've brought 2 people together who have instantly just, you know, agreed with everything that the other person has said before in my life. This is the most.
So David, you're right. The rest of you can leave now. Bronwyn and I will just carry on. That's fine.
I'll just go and get a bottle of wine, Tony.
It's a bit early in the morning for him, I think. Ash, I noticed you nodding along there. Do you want to tell us a bit about your experience in terms of bringing that technical and you know, medical experience together to come up with where you've got to?
Was that to me? Sorry.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Thanks. You know, it's really similar to what Nathan said, and again, it's not just because we're both orthopedic surgeons. I think it was about you go to work and you spot all these problems, and then you can either decide to just put up with them, or you pick the problem that really hurts you the most and you try and solve it. And I think that was probably similar to Nathan's. I've actually been messaging Nathan on the side saying I love his product because it's going to help orthopedic surgeons get less bleeps at night time, because everyone else is going to know how to handle cases. But that was his passion, and mine was about logistics and, you know, getting frustrated at not having the right stock. And then sort of what I did was I tried to learn to code and realized I couldn't. So I just put in a little bit of money for a very early proof of concept. And it was really just kind of going nowhere because you don't have the resources or the skills. And that's where the entrepreneur program came along. And the first thing they did was partner me with a set of amazing developers called Bronze Labs. And they just took the company to that next level where we could actually get the product out there into hospitals. And then once we had that proof of concept, then you get sort of funding come in, when you get paying customers, and it sort of builds up from there. But I think that was the key point of where you transition from just being like a clinician to actually a clinical entrepreneur. And it's such a hard journey to do alone by yourself, unless you've got, again, all those other people with experience, different levels of cognition, different ideas supporting you along that way. I just think to really build I haven't got a really massive successful company yet. I'm hoping I do, but I think to even get on that journey, you need a lot of help and support along the way, because medical school doesn't teach you the skills you need outside of how to be a clinician, in all honesty.
Thanks, Ash. Tamsin, I wanted to ask a question for you. You've clearly identified we have a challenge. You mentioned that you're engaging with Australia. I'd love to hear just a little bit more about where that's up to. It was kind of a little bit truncated at the back end, and we've got a few minutes, so I'm going to poke Tony and say I'm just going to give her an extra couple of minutes. Just tell us where you're up to in that, and what can we do to help?
Thank you. That's such a kind thing to offer. It was, so when I went to Australia, it was really interesting because I kind of went along saying, you know, do you guys have something better than this, or is this, you know, and they were saying actually they put these expensive ones in hearing hats, so that the kids wear these hats at school because they've got to wear them anyway, but actually they had problems with them in that it was very thin when it was put into the hat, so it kept breaking, and the kids kept breaking it, and they were very expensive. And some of the kids lose it, and some of the kids so in fact what happened was I didn't just get interest from doctors, but also from audiologists, and also your prison service, who felt that possibly it might help people when they were taken into court, if they could help them to hear, because they identify quite a lot of these, because in the indigenous population, glue ear lasts for such a long time that actually sometimes by the time they're reaching court in late teens, that actually they need to hear, sometimes they don't do well in court simply because they can't really hear what's going on. So it was amazing. And if I can be really honest, I'm not sure how I've got all these lovely collaboration, and what's lovely is that one of the challenges is to change, when you've got a new idea, it's not just about the product, but you're trying to change the culture of how something's managed. And I think that one of the wonderful things about the Clinical Entrepreneur Programme and something like this is that as all together as clinical entrepreneurs, then we can support each other.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And one of the great things I've seen both with And Health, and I think what we're showing tonight is we have that at both ends, but we just haven't connected it as well as we might have in the past. So really pleased to be working on that. Hugo, I know that Bronwyn's been giving you grief all night, so I wanted to give you a right of reply as somebody who's not a medico and coming into this sphere. What's the experience been like for you? How do we find the great clinical entrepreneurs to grab the cash from private equity?
Look, I think people end up in healthcare from passion, right? And especially if you're from private equity, which I'm not, but people don't come into healthcare because they want to get rich quick. They come here to make a difference, and that's definitely the founding story of Perks. Is we wanted to make a difference to outcomes. But in terms of that outsider perspective, I think all startups, as I think it was Tony said at the very beginning, all startups are ultimately machines to test hypotheses. And for us, the first two hypotheses we were capable of testing on our own, which was, can we make a phenomenal patient experience that is 5 stars? And then secondly, can we sell that, right? The next two hypotheses are, okay, great. Now, how do you implement that at scale in clinical workflows? Don't have any ideas on that. And fourthly, how do you then prove outcomes using a variety of different things, whether it's real world evidence or randomized controlled trials? Again, my co-founder and I looked at each other and went, probably not our expertise given our background. So that's where people like And Health are critical, as well as, you know, we have a medical advisory board with some of the leading physicians here in Australia who've been with us for 3 years now. And they're critical because we couldn't solve those problems on our own. And I think that's probably quite complementary but opposite to what some of the other teams had here, which is like, I totally know how to make the workflow work better for a clinician. And I've done trials before in my doctorate or, you know, in my master's of something. So they're off the races on that, but they've got no idea how to make a great patient experience or how to sell it. And that's where, you know, this idea of how do you get both sides talking to each other more, and cross-pollinating is a word I use quite a bit when I talk about this, I think is an important challenge, because ultimately it's a bit unfair to expect, and Nathan's obviously done a great job doing it, it's a bit unfair to expect a doctorate clinician to also get up to speed on coding, right? And as an ex-software kind of engineering guy in my far background at university, I wouldn't dare hold a scalpel, as I think Bron said before. So you wouldn't expect me in a year to get up to speed on surgery. whether it's orthopedic or otherwise. So I think it's about marrying those two complementary skill sets, and the more we can foster conversations of surfacing real problems in healthcare from patient perspectives or doctor perspectives or administrator perspectives, and marrying them with a broad set of skill sets around the table, not just one type, that's going to help us move forward faster, which is ultimately what happens, because every day that we're not moving forward is patient opportunity missed and outcome opportunity missed. So I think that's the challenge to everyone, both sides of the world here, is how do you get that marrying happening faster and start those conversations.
Tony, you look like you're itching to say something about that.
And no, as I have left childhood learning and entered adult learning, apparently that little imp that sits on my shoulder that was going to take Hugo to task for elevating orthopedic surgeons to scalpels because they use hammers and chisels still, I'm afraid. And a year, crikey, that's a long time to train an orthopod, isn't it? I'm joking, I couldn't resist. I should have left that out. But I think actually a childlike quality is a really important thing in an entrepreneur, still to have that inquisitive playfulness. And they haven't sacked me yet. I'm sure I will get sacked one day. But no, I know, Hugo, I completely agree. Do you know, this is a love-in, isn't it? It's just hearing this two different sides of the planet, diversity, people from different backgrounds, and all their different thoughts on what they're doing. What great opportunity. What great opportunity.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now we've got a few minutes left, and I'm conscious that I've got plenty more questions from Roger to get to look through. One of the pieces I'm interested to just ask quickly is around the future of healthcare. And I know Bronwyn has probably got half an ear on the federal budget, which is going to tell us all about our digital health future, hopefully this evening in particular, because it's been such a rapid fire accelerated period over the last few months. But what do you think are the key elements that you're seeing in the UK, Tony? But I might start with you, Bronwyn, and knowing that you haven't heard the budget because we've been on the call whilst the Treasurer has been making the speech to Parliament. What are the things that we hope to look for from the federal government to give us a bit of impetus to take the next steps?
Thankfully, it's only the preamble, so they're only reflecting on the horror of what has happened economically so far. So it's pretty depressing stuff at the moment. Look, I think there's a number of things looking forward, and Minister Hunt has said, Australia's management of COVID, the recent wave in Victoria notwithstanding, does position us really well to become a COVID-safe environment for medical research, education and commercialisation. But we also have some other levers. So we really want to make sure that at least digital medicine and digital therapeutic software remains covered by the R&D tax incentive, and that there's no winding back of that. It's an incredibly important piece of policy that attracts inbound investment and enables companies to compete internationally. The universal access to telehealth for all Australians, Greg Hunt has mentioned that he wants to see that cemented in the budget versus being a kind of rolling six-month thing. Sorry, that's now the puppy going in the background. I think that's really, really important. For me, regulation of software as a medical device, which is not budget related, but will give us a regulated standing on which we can then approach the Minister's office to have a discussion about reimbursement. So reimbursement for virtual and asynchronous care, remote patient management and monitoring, those are things that we know create massive markets very quickly. We've got a case study in the US. And that reimbursement piece, who pays, remains the single biggest challenge for us. I think coming out of COVID, we are going to see a capital crunch. We haven't seen it yet, but it will flow at some point. But hopefully there'll be some more stimulus through biomedical translation funds. So for the UK group, government matched venture funds that are managed by professional managers to continue to support that. I think in health and medical research, we are somewhat protected because we do have the Medical Research Future Fund. We would like to see them do more in the digital health space. It's not a space that they're overly comfortable in at the moment. So we are working really hard on that. But I think in terms of budget, we need to get our medical researchers back to work. A lot of them lost their gigs in biotech companies and they didn't receive any salary support. We've got some world-class clinicians and researchers who are currently unemployed, and I think that's That's a horrible waste of Australian talent, and I shouldn't say that in a UK thing because they might start headhunting them. That's okay, they're not allowed to leave the country, so it's fine. But yeah, look, I'm really hopeful. It's going to be a big budget. It's hopefully going to be a budget that stimulates investment. I don't know. I haven't actually been this excited about a budget for a long time, but you know, we'll see how it goes. But I do think there's some big policy levers here, and I think at least in the highest levels of government, there's a real recognition that we can't just continue to build bigger hospitals and bigger clinics and deliver care that way. It's just simply we can't afford it. But it's also not great for most Australians. You know, we've seen with the uptake of telehealth, it doesn't provide great accessibility. And to Hugo's point, it doesn't provide equity of care. And so we need to address that.
Thanks, Bronwyn. And Tony, we've got about 4 minutes left. So you spoke earlier about having the opportunity to, obviously you just hang out at Simon Stevens building and just, you know, wait by the lift well for him to turn up and bring an entrepreneur along every day by the sounds. And you mentioned that the Secretary of State had obviously been very supportive as well. What do you see as the next steps for the UK government? Obviously you don't have a budget anytime soon because Rishi's going to do that in the new year. But how do you see things? What's the next steps?
Well, you will understand, as someone who works at NHS England, I'm not about to make any new policy announcements that aren't already out there. I mean, and we could spend a while reflecting on the situation we face, the emergency we're currently embedded in, and how we look at that. But before we hit COVID, the NHS had published its long-term plan. And, you know, I've travelled across the world in different health economies, and that's a real distillation of kind of where we need to get to in that document of synthesising many of the things we've heard today. And, you know, in fact, almost everything we've heard today has had a core theme through it, okay, other than Nathan, which is allowing orthopaedic surgeons more sleep, which is what it boiled down to effectively. The rest of it was about empowering patients. And actually, perhaps that's the real thing, that COVID has helped us do a number of things. It is, people have collaborated in a way with trust that we didn't just all roll our sleeves up and get on with it together and not worry about organizational boundaries too much, because there was a big thing that we had to get on and deal with. And perhaps one of the things that will come out of this is actually we will break that kind of stranglehold that the status quo of medical practice, which has grown up for thousands of years and is rather paternalistic relationship, maybe. Do you know, I think you have to look at evolution, don't you, and to see what works. And what we're doing now, between what Bronwyn's doing in Australia and what we're doing in the NHS, is if we observe the experiments that are being run in our startup communities to see what's coming through, patients wanting more empowerment, more control. Look at those great things that are around, cancer pathways and empowering patients in management. And look at the synergies. I'm sorry, we did not plan this, between Tamsin's wearable tech with a digital interface and Kyle's epilepsy system. You know, if there were two similar but on opposite sides of the planet, and yet so much that's complementary and overlapping them. So what we're seeing is something bubbling up from under the surface, where people who are on the front line are, running these experiments, doing these things. But the trouble is, there are so many tens of thousands of things you could do. It's not until you step out of your horizontal and start out of your vertical rather, and look across the horizontal, which is what you're encouraging us to do today, David. So I think in the NHS, and there's, we've published our people plan recently, our long-term plan. All those are the key policy drivers. What COVID has done is it hasn't changed those; it's accelerated them. And I think what we're going to see is an opportunity now. And I think Bronwyn is spot on. From what she said, we can't, it was Einstein, wasn't it? If we always do what we always did, we'll always get what we always got. now is the time. We need to empower our champions. We need them to get them to come forward. And they're not just the startups, it's our patients and citizens too. So my encouragement to my execs and the politicians I work with is really to help us just unlock that agenda. So I think it is pushing in the right direction of travel with our Secretary of State, but actually most people in healthcare are pushing it away, but they haven't had the tools, they haven't had the ability to be able to do that. And what we've seen today are some really great examples of those tools. So how it is super complex, but then, lots of things in life are really complex. And that's one of the reasons I don't think we've got that traction. So Bron was right, and I'm pleased to hear you've got some incentives and some policy levers in Australia that really encourage this ecosystem. I think they're vital to what we do. I know the British government have got several levers in place, and those are key things. So I'd encourage them, our leaders, to carry on doing that. I'm certainly, when I'm asked for advice, I'm very supportive towards those policy levers that will help us encourage exactly the sort of thing that we're seeing. Sorry, I'll shut up there, Dave. I could carry on for a long time, but I'm in agreement with what others have said.
Thank you very much, Tony. And I'm not sure that we've asked before, so I'm just going to take the opportunity, seeing as I can see you all on screen. All the entrepreneurs and Bronwyn, because you had slides, Tony didn't. Are you all happy? Thumbs up if you're happy for us to share your slides to the audience tonight. Yeah, that looks to be everyone. Yes. Wonderful. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Terrific. So we'll send out an email tomorrow to everybody who's been on the call tonight, sharing those slide decks. We'll also, obviously, through that, be able to connect the Australian entrepreneurs with Tony and vice versa with Bronwyn. So bringing this piece together to a full fruition, I hope, and lots of opportunities into the future. It is just past 8, so I need to wrap up. But I thank, again, in particular, Tony and Bronwyn for bringing all these wonderful entrepreneurs to us and sharing their insights. I have to agree with Tony. It's been a love-in, unashamedly, and it's terrific that it is, because it's so much easier to work with people who really are excited and engaged with each other, and that's part of the entrepreneurial spirit and that spirit of collaboration that we need. So thank you so much to both of you for your time, and to each of the entrepreneurs as well. It's been terrific to have you on, and I love these sessions. As somebody who doesn't work in this space nearly enough or closely enough, just to hear the stuff that you're working on really is inspiring. And to Kat Boyd and to the DIT and FCDO team for supporting the event tonight, thank you so much. We look forward to doing more and more of these. In fact, if you want to hang out with us again in a few weeks' time, Mike Walsh, who's the chair of the Digital Health CRC here in Australia, as well as Neville Board, who's the Digital Health, I forgot his exact title, but I'll call him the Emperor of Digital Health for one of his exact title, for the state of Victoria, are going to be on a call sharing their insights about what's next in digital health in Australia. It's in a lovely evening slot, the same as this, so you'll be able to engage with us in the morning in the UK. Thank you everybody for joining us. It's been terrific. I really appreciate your time, especially on budget night when there's so much more thrilling stuff to, so enjoy the rest of your evening. For those in Australia, a glass of red, I think is still technically medically approved. So go and enjoy that. One more cup of coffee or a lovely English breakfast tea for those in the UK. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll talk again soon.